So around like a month ago, I made a video basically saying that you should watch the Pokemon Journeys anime, but now that the first 12 episodes of the English dub are finally out on Netflix, I thought today would be a nice time to tell you if I think the dub version of the anime is worth your time or not. The dub actually has a few differences other than, being in a different language, so rather than give you a sort of review-esque take on the series like I did in last month's video, I figured I would instead talk about what the dub does great and what it does bad. And then by the end, hopefully you can have an idea of if it's worth your time or not. If you haven't seen the series in any form yet, I will be showing footage from the show, and also I will be talking about minor spoilers, so just make sure you tread carefully. Now this dub really needs to be great to win people back over, because the dubs for both X and Y as well as Sun and Moon were really bad. There were some iffy choices in terms of casting, and we'll talk about the soundtrack of Journeys in a moment, but in those two series the soundtrack was atrocious. So anyway, I was skeptical about this dub, and so were a lot of other people. Even I stopped watching the dub in Sun and Moon, which has always been my preferred choice. So did the English version of Pokemon Journeys deliver? Let's find out, starting with our first topic of discussion, which is a pretty positive one, the voice acting. And I honestly can't think of a bad casting for this series so far. Sarah Natachine reprises her role as Ash Ketchum, and I gotta say, in my opinion, she's the definitive best voice actor for Ash. Obviously, I'm extremely biased because I grew up with her voice acting and I speak English, but she really has turned Ash into her own character. I find myself impressed nearly every episode I watch with her voice acting. Zeno Robinson makes his series debut as Go, and I really like this casting. Now that I've had a few episodes with his voice acting, I've gotten really accustomed to it. He had roles in other shows like Ben 10 and My Hero Academia, but now that he's in Pokemon, he'll get much more exposure. If Go becomes a long-running protagonist of this series like Ash, I'll be happy to hear Zeno Robinson's voice acting for many episodes to come. Chloe's voiced by Jeremy Lee, and I actually loved this voice a lot more than I thought I would. She portrays Chloe's sassy attitude really well, but is also able to deliver emotion-driven lines. Ray Chase does a great job as Professor Cerise, and Billy Kometz has a ton of voice acting experience across many different video games and anime, and he also plays Ren in this series. He also plays as Ash's Rotom phone, and sorry to say this, but one thing I really don't like, and this is kind of nitpicky, but a Pokedex really shouldn't be breathing.
The seed Pokemon, a grass and poison type. It's believed that a nutritious diet and lots of sunlight make Venusaur's flower bloom in more vibrant colors. The flower's scent can calm and heal the human heart.
It's not a human, it's an electronic, so having audible breath in its speech, that's just odd to me. Next up, we have a really amazing casting, which is Alejandro Saab as Leon. I used to watch this guy's videos a few years ago, but I never expected him to voice a character in Pokemon, so that was nice to see. Xander Mobus, the guy who plays the Smash Bros. Announcer, shows up in this series and, true to his fashion, plays the announcer at Winden Stadium. There's also a ton of returning actors from the 4Kids era of the Pokemon anime, which is really nice to see. One other thing that I really like is that they're showing continuity with the voice actors. Lance was voiced by Wayne Grayson back during the original series in Advanced Generation, and he returns to voice Lance in episode 12 of Pokemon Journeys. So yeah, this series is probably the best voice acting cast we've seen in a while. Next up, I want to talk about one specific name change in the dub. If you use Twitter, you probably know what I'm talking about already. They changed the name of the Pokemon World Championships to the Pokemon World Coronation Series. Now, I'm in the extreme minority when I say that I actually really like this name. To me, it just sounds a lot cooler, but I understand that's an unpopular opinion. The reason they changed it, I assume, is to avoid confusion with the real-life Pokemon World Championships, but if that's not a problem in the Japanese anime, I don't understand why it would be over here. Some of the localized names people don't like, but Cerise and Chloe sound fine to me, and I don't see any problems with them. People will get used to the dub names like they do with the other characters in the series, so it's no big deal on that front. I guess now I should talk about the score for the dub, and honestly, it's not as bad as Sun and Moon, but it really could be better. I guess they're aiming the show towards younger audiences, but I have not met a sane person in real life or the internet that actually thinks the dub score is better than the Japanese one. They just have a way of making scenes fit the tone that it's trying to convey in the Japanese version, but in the English it just feels off. There's this one scene when Ash and Go are flying to Galar, and it's supposed to be ominous, and in the Japanese version there isn't any background music, but for some reason they added in some background music over the airplane turbulence in the dub. There's some other examples like the music feeling too walled, which basically means that it doesn't blend or transition well, and them changing up music for the Lugia sequence in episode 2 almost ruined it for me. I'm not sure if this counts as soundtrack, but in the Lance vs. Leon battle, there's just one thing missing, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but for some reason they removed the audience cheering in the background. I don't know why they did this, but it kind of ruined it for me. The dub has consistently been proof that a bad soundtrack can tarnish what should be an epic scene. Ed Goldfarb is the composer for the English dub, and I really honestly think that he should either step up his game or they should part ways with him. I guess I do want to end it on a more positive note, so I will say this. As someone who grew up on the dub and watched the dub up until the middle of Sun and Moon, I will say if you've been consistently watching the dub for your entire Pokemon anime watching career or whatever, you'll enjoy this. Personally, I prefer watching the dub just because I find myself more emotionally drawn to characters that I speak the same language as, but in order to keep up to date with Pokemon, I'm gonna watch it in Japanese with English subtitles. So final verdict, if you prefer the dub, watch the dub, and if you prefer the sub, watch the sub. If you watch the dub but agree that the soundtrack is pretty bad, I honestly think you should give the sub a try. So yeah, that's my quick little review of the dub so far. I really honestly hope it starts to get better in terms of soundtrack, because other than the OST, I found myself really liking this dub. Even with that shortcoming of the soundtrack, it is easily the best dubbed Pokemon anime in recent years, and I'll keep watching it every time new episodes drop on Netflix. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and let me know if you prefer the sub or the dub in the comments. That's pretty much it, so with all of that out of the way, my name is Zoro, and make sure to stay tuned to my channel as the journey continues.